At this moment, the great tale of our age is being written.
Welcome back to the Real Cinema Squad. I'm Austin, and that's Ty. And today we're going to be talking about Rings of Power Season 2. Recently, this show just ended its second season, and we have a lot of thoughts about this. And so we wanted to talk about just what we liked, what we disliked, where do we think this show is headed, and how does it compare overall to just the Lord of the Rings universe. And so what are your overall thoughts about this Season 2 compared to Season 1 and where we're going with this?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it quick, Austin. I was completely underwhelmed by this show. I was super underwhelmed by Season 1. I was a little less underwhelmed by Season 2, so I'll say they must have listened a little bit because I did like Season 2 better than I liked Season 1. And there are certain characters that I enjoyed, especially Sauron's character, I think. Anatar, I thought that he did a fantastic job of being a deceiver and deceiving all of those that he came into contact with. Like, he really played that role well, and so I did like that aspect, and there are aspects of the show that I did enjoy. However, I was talking to you, I just watched again, which was probably a mistake, but I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended cut, and when you watch those, anything other than those it's hard to compare to. What I come to grips with is it's not even feeling like the same universe.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare, and I guess the best thing to do as a viewer is to just treat this as something separate. The love that I have for the original Lord of the Rings, and even The Hobbit, which I didn't like The Hobbit as much as the original Lord of the Rings, but it's still, both of those, those 6 movies are better, in my opinion, than this show.
Yeah. You know, I think you're talking about how it's underwhelming, and I think one of the reasons that we feel like that, or so many fans out there are like, oh, this isn't Tolkien, is because we grew up with Peter Jackson. Yeah. And he has a certain vision, he has a certain way he filmed these movies, and when I watched The Hobbit, I was like, well, this isn't the book that I love. Mm-hmm. They did so much new other stuff, but yet you watch those movies and it still feels cohesive to some extent. And I think that we may have a little bit rose-colored glasses, to be honest, to some extent. Mm-hmm. But I think that when we're looking at characterizations and we're looking at how the story is pacing and we're looking at all these things, like it's connected to the larger universe, and there's hints here and there.
Right.
But there's nothing really, in my opinion, that's causing me to care about these characters and where they end up, even though we know where they end up.
Right.
And so I think like it's a lot of spectacle without a lot of substance. I did like it better than Season 1 though, because it's tighter than Season 1 in terms of story.
Right.
Season 1 jumped around a lot. Mm-hmm. This one gave you a little bit more focus, specifically with the Sauron stuff. And I mean, I got to say, like, the actor playing Sauron kills it.
Yeah.
And the way that he deceives everybody, the way he deceives Lord Celebrimbor and the rest of the elves, it's fantastic acting. Like, the way he manipulates certain aspects and says certain things and builds them up just to tear them down, it completely confuses the heck out of them.
Yeah, he makes them think that they're making the decision when ultimately he's the one that's swaying their decision.
Yeah, and they thought he was some kind of like God to some extent. And I will give it to the creators. They did take from the appendices of Tolkien's writings to go along with the Anatar persona, because Sauron said, "I have many personas, I have many names." Mm-hmm. Anatar was the main one, the Lord of Gifts. Yeah. And the Lord of Gifts, he was the one that influenced Celebrimbor to create these rings. And so I will give the show, like, they did a fantastic job with that. And so kudos to them for focusing on that the most. Yeah. Because I think that played well into what we're going to get down the road with the Lord of the Rings movies. What are the things that were most underwhelming to you when you were looking at this show?
Underwhelming, I would say the halflings. Like, that whole part of the show could have just been omitted. And I understand that they're playing this into a larger story, which is going to ultimately lead to the Shire. I know that's what's going to happen. Yeah. They're going to be a distant relative of Bilbo and Frodo, or Samwise, or somebody. They're going to relate back to Merry or Pip or somebody in the Shire. Like, that's going to happen. They're going to help found the Shire. They're going to stumble upon the Shire, and instead of moving around for the rest of their lives, they're going to be like, finally, we're gonna settle down here.
For sure.
And it's going to have a happy ending in that sense.
Yeah.
So I know that they're leading to something, and so I'm going to continue to give them the benefit of the doubt there. And then Numenor, Although it looks great, like you said, the spectacle is great. So far, the substance of that has been underwhelming for me, and I know that they're leading to things. I think that this king is going to get one of the rings of power, and it's going to corrupt him even more, and that's going to lead to the fall of Numenor. And like, I know that that's coming, and I think that they're setting some things up. I also don't like the way that they treat Elrond's character. Like he's not the same Elrond that we see in the Lord of the Rings, and I get it. This is supposed to be thousands of years prior, and he can develop over time, and that's everyone's argument always. It's like, why is Galadriel not like Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and why is Elrond not the same? And you can argue that, hey, they have thousands of years to develop, and sure, they can. And maybe I'm just used to what they were in the original trilogy, and that's where I love them the most. And I think that they're trying with Elrond. Like, I think he fought a little bit more this season, but he's still like passive and not a leader. I don't know. I struggle with that.
You know, one of the things with that is I've had the same thoughts, but I've kind of give it some benefit of the doubt because we grew up with these amazing franchises. And I don't think that the modern Hollywood is going to give us back what we grew up with.
Sure.
And so I like character development is a real thing. We talk about that, right? And so like Elrond has a lot of character development to get to the one we know.
Right.
And I will say that I enjoyed him more in season 2 because I felt like you started to see him be calculated and realize what's going on in the Middle Earth and how he needed to act to become a leader, especially towards the end of the season 2 when he was the general that led the charge.
Yeah.
And so I really like that. I think the biggest piece here is that Galadriel, awesome character in the Tolkien's writings. Awesome character. She is a great enchantress, amazing magical powers, super powerful. She was part of the White Council with Gandalf and Saruman and all them. But this show has painted her, and I don't even know if it's the characterization as much. It's, to be honest with you, I don't think the actress that plays the part well. And I could say that about several other actors in the show too, but like, for whatever reason, when everybody else is being super strong, she's being kind of weak in terms of characterization. And you saw that in the finale of season 2 when she's fighting Sauron and how like menacing he was and how calculated he was and how well he portrayed that. And then you just kind of have like little mousy Galadriel over here.
She's not
that's
powerful.
that's like trying to be powerful, but like it doesn't really come off as powerful to me. And that's how I felt about Elrond too at times. I was like, he's not this power, like he's not portrayed as this powerful thing. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can get there.
Yeah.
But that's how I've felt so far with those characters. The only one who seemed menacing to me is Sauron.
Yeah. She stole the show. You're right.
Yeah.
He stole the show. I am looking forward to seeing what they continue to do with him. I hate that my favorite character is the villain, but I guess that's sometimes what you get.
Yeah.
When you have good villains, they almost make themselves believable at times as to why they believe what they believe. And they're compelling at times. And he obviously did a great job of encompassing that. But yeah, I guess some of the battles as well. Like I was hoping for more battles, like a Helm's Deep battle. Like that would be so incredible to get something of that scale. And maybe we're leading up to that.
Yeah,
I'm sure we are. I think we're leading up to the battle of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So I think, right? I mean, that's what we're getting to.
Yeah,
eventually?
you see that with the end with Isildur and Elendil and some of the ways they're setting up that with Numenor and the battle with men.
Yeah.
Especially with Sauron corrupting the rings for men and him. That's obviously what's going to happen next is with him giving the rings. So we're getting there. But it's funny you mentioned the battles because I even told you after watching that like penultimate episode, I was like, it's like they're trying to copy Helm's Deep or copy battles from the movies because they're obviously like that's what came before and that's what they're trying to be inspired by. But it's like it doesn't seem original. It just seems like they're trying to copy the same scenes, especially when like all the elves showed up and they were on like the horizon, and like it just seemed like what happened in Helm's Deep. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like the same beats, and like I mean, you know, it rhymes. That's how a lot of things go. I mean, George Lucas did that with Star Wars, but I don't think it all needs to be a copy of what we know before just to get people in the seats.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would just love to see more action. And I know that Lord of the Rings isn't all about action.
Yeah.
They have great stories, and you're telling a story, and there's multiple things going on. I think that's what Peter Jackson, he was so good at, is managing multiple storylines and making them cohesive. And at times I felt like they would bounce when I wish they would just stay in one story.
Yeah.
And they would bounce to Gandalf, or they would bounce to the halflings, or they would bounce to the dwarves, and it was like times where I was just wishing that they would have stayed with Galadriel and Elrond, or Sauron and Celebrimbor. Like there's just times where I wish they would have stayed on one thing and not bounced at certain times.
Yeah, and I think the biggest strength is they did realize the Hobbit thing may have been bringing them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they didn't focus on it as much. Because in my opinion, to the larger story, it's not really super beneficial right now to be focused on them.
No.
I think it was really to get us to the Gandalf reveal at the end of season 2. But I don't necessarily agree that jumping around to certain of those things was like completely lacking, just because like I think it's helpful to see like the rings are impacting these different races. The dwarves, the men, the elves. And so the Durin storyline was very important.
Yeah.
I just think that like sometimes, and like they really made it cohesive with the Elrond stuff and what was going on, with Celebrimbor, and like they were focused on what Anatar was doing with both of them. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was a little more cohesive this time around. And so I do think moving forward, I think season 3 will really show maybe that united a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's been a little bit of a slow burn to get there. And I think that's maybe why we're a little underwhelmed, because it just feels like it's long time storytelling, which I have the patience for. Mm-hmm. It's more of just like, we don't have a lot of source material to go off of, because in Tolkien's writings and the Penances and the Sumerian, there's only a certain amount of information given, and then the rest is kind of up to these creators to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And hey, look, I can sit here and be an armchair quarterback all day long, but if I were given the keys to the kingdom, I would hope to think that I could, do a good job with it and bring in, but there has to be a lot of creativity and creative freedom when this is given, and I think they're trying their best. I genuinely do think that they're trying, and they're trying to listen.
Yeah.
And I do love, seeing how things tie in. Like I do love the idea of prequels.
Yeah.
And seeing how they tie it all together. And you're right, at times they did hit, and it was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And at other times I felt like it was lacking, and, that's okay. There's no perfect show, although there was a perfect trilogy.
For sure.
But I'll stop doing that.
For Frodo.
So where do we go in season 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty obvious tell based on what we know about Tolkien's writings and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Next step is corrupting men. We've already corrupted the dwarves a little bit with King Durin. We already corrupted the elves a little bit with confusing them. Now they're all kind of aware of it now, but I think men's the next one. They're the easiest corruptible because Numenor is on the brink of collapse. So I think Sauron's going to show up, and now that there's a new king there, he's going to corrupt all of them. And like you said, the new king's going to get the ring.
Yeah.
But I think that's where I think Isildur and Elendil will play a huge part moving forward in season 3. Mm-hmm. Now that they're kind of back together, they're on the run, they're kind of in hiding. We even saw Elendil pull out the famous sword at the end of season 2, which is super cool. We know where that's headed, right? I mean, Elendil is going to try to take on Sauron with the battle in Middle-earth. It's going to get broken. His son, Isildur, is going to take the sword, slice off Sauron's hand. It's what we saw at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
That's all coming. What do you think?
I think that we're going to see Elrond start to build Rivendell and establish like his little kingdom.
Yeah.
So we'll see that kind of played out. We'll continue to see his relationship with Galadriel continue. Obviously, they're not going anywhere, and they're going to continue to play a bigger role. I'm curious to see how Elendil and Isildur, are they going to play the role of group of rebels, like a kind of paving the way to usurp the throne and kind of take over right before it's time to battle Sauron?
Yeah.
Are they going to be like the group that stands firm? And obviously he's going to continue a relationship or build a relationship with the elves, because ultimately that's how they're going to fight in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And when does Gilgalad, come into play, and how does that all work?
Yeah.
How does that all tie together? I'm very interested to see all of those things play out, and I'm excited for those things.
Yeah.
So.
We would love to know what your thoughts are. What did you think of season 2? What were your favorite parts? What did you not like? We would love to know your theories about season 3 as well. So like this video, subscribe to our channel, and comment below, and we'll see you next time.